Hilchos Keilim Perek Shishi, the laws of utensils, chapter 6. Today's Tainus Esther. Fast day is very good to learn Torah. Extra Torah we learn on fast days. It's a spiritual day in general, fast days, yeah? We don't eat. We don't attend to our bodily needs as much, so it's very important to learn. Just to add to yesterday, by the way, we learned about two instruments yesterday, navel and bitnoin. So yesterday I showed you that navel is like more of a harp, and bitnoin is this guy, the sitar. But then I looked it up in the art scroll, Mishnayos, and they have these two pictures. For navel, they have what's called a lute, which is this. It actually fits better with the Rambam's description that they used to actually store coins in here as payment. And then bitnoin is, I don't know how to pronounce this, sithara, not sure. Yeah. Anyway, it also fits more with the Rambam's description that it literally rests on the stomach. Bitnoin comes from the word beten, which means stomach. So this is more of a accurate description of an instrument that literally sits on your stomach. Anyway, that's just a completion from yesterday. But then today, the Rambam talks at length about the rule that a utensil is only called a utensil so long as it's whole. Once it becomes damaged and it gets a hole, no pun intended, then it loses its status as a utensil. How big does the hole have to be? That's today's subject. Okay? Right. Mostly we're going to see it's one standard size of pomegranates, but other times, other size holes classified to ruin a utensil. So it says like this, Halacha Aleph, Kol kli shenitma v'nishbar achar shenitma. Any utensil becomes impure, and then it breaks after it becomes impure. V'nifsadat tzurase v'tashmisha, and now its form is lost and its usage is lost. It can't function as it used to. Tahar b'shvirasei. So the breaking itself makes it pure. V'chein Keilim shenishberu kishehein tahirin. Same thing if you have a utensil which didn't become impure, it's fully pure, but it broke in that state. Shivreihen ein mekablin tuma. Now that it's broken, it can no longer become tameh because it won't perform its regular use. Halacha beis kama shir ashever sheishaver kli etza kli etzem v'yiatar. How big is the break that a wood or bone utensil has to break in order to be pure? So classically, the Rambam says kol klei balebatim shiuran b'rimaynim. By default, regular homeowners' utensils, regular utensil in mine or your home, the amount is a pomegranate. Once a utensil gets a hole the size of a pomegranate, people won't use it anymore. Today I think it's very different because today we are disposable with utensils super easily. But in those days, a regular guy didn't get rid of things that he bought unless it had a big enough hole. If it got a small hole, he would simply store bigger things in it. Right. So until it gets the hole the size of a pomegranate, that's when it becomes totally unusable. Ketzad, what does that mean? Once a utensil gets a hole the size to let a pomegranate out, it's pure. And even that, not a regular pomegranate, the Rambam says, the pomegranate which they said, Beinani is an average sized pomegranate, not big, not too small, based on our vision. You examine the pomegranates, and if it's a pretty average sized pomegranate, there has to be 3 pomegranates inside, like this. Imagine you had 3 on a branch, and they're sitting in a utensil. So you know how when you have things that are tightly together, they don't release unless the hole is very big. If you had just 1 pomegranate, the hole was one size, it would fall out. But if you have 3 stuck together, it would take a bigger hole to get 1 out. So we're talking about the hole to allow 1 pomegranate of a group of 3 out of a bowl, out of a utensil. Let's say a utensil only got a hole the size of an olive. Ustamai, so you sealed it. The chazar v'nika b'maitzi zayis ustamai. Then it got another hole, size of an olive, and you seal that too. It keeps getting more and more holes. Now, cumulatively, there's a hole the size of a pomegranate. Says the Rambam, afal pisha hu sasum tahar. Even though it's really all sealed, but now that the total hole is the size of a pomegranate, tahar, it's pure. Because there's a new face now. What does it mean, new face? Meaning that all the sealants were just new additions. They weren't changing the status of the utensil. Utensil itself has a hole the size of a pomegranate. Halacha Gimel, Keilim sha'asan mitchila nekuvim b'maitzi rimayin. Some utensils you make to begin with holes. You don't make all utensils sealed on all sides. Some of them have holes. Certain baskets, exactly. Well, he gives an example right now. Going hasal, like a basket. V'ha puchlatz shel gmalim, and a camel puchlatz. A puchlatz was a kind of something like this. This is more of the next example that Rambam gives. The apifyares. This is the apifyares. It was like a basket woven of very thinly placed reeds. But think of this concept like a sack that you can store big items in to put over a camel's back. That's puchlat shel gmalin. So, and this is the apifyares. So all these things that are elu mekablin tuma ad sheyikara ruban. Here, since they were made to begin with the whole size of a pomegranate, elu mekablin tuma ad sheyikara ruban. So these things remain tamei even with these big holes until the majority of them is torn. Halacha dalid apifyares. This case itself. Let's examine these baskets. She'asa lahen konim milamaylon u'milamatan lechazek. You made reeds on top, meaning on the sides and under, to strengthen them. Basically, it tore on the bottom, and you made these U-shaped reeds. See that? And you're going to kind of attach it to the sides of the basket, and it's going to hold it more tightly. Says the Rambam, still tahira. That's not a tight or a strong enough tightening mechanism, and so the utensil remains pure, because we still look at the rip, and the rip is more than 50%, so it's torn. Also, lahen gapayim kol shehein, if you made what's called clasps, you didn't just take reeds. You took the reeds and you locked it in to the rim of the basket, then, afal pishihi kula nekuva b'maitzirima, and even though the total size of the holes all around can allow a pomegranate to come out, harezu mekabeles tuma. It's back, or it's subject now, to becoming tamei because those big holes were made to begin with to be that way. And the reeds with the clasps are a tight, strong tightening mechanism. Halacha hey, kol Keilim she'enon yochelim lekabel rimainim. What if you have a tiny utensil? It's not big enough to hold even a pomegranate. So of course it can't get a hole the size of a pomegranate. The chatzi oreva, the measurements for a quarter of a kav and a half of a quarter of a kav, which is an eighth of a kav. The haknoinim aktanim, small plates. Shiuran b'moitzi zayis. So their amount to become disqualified is if there's a hole big enough to allow an olive out. If an olive can come out, that's it, no longer a utensil. Nigmamu sifsei sehen. If their rims are worn away, remember yesterday we saw how the baskets are made. They're woven, and then at the end you secure the rims down with these little stakes. So if those rims wear away, so even though to begin with we're talking about these tiny little plates or measurements, as long as there's enough to hold any amount, they remain impure. Because in the beginning they were meant to hold small amounts, so even now that they can hold only small amounts, they're still impure, or they could become impure. Halacha vav, hasalim shall pass, bread baskets. They're obviously meant to hold bigger units, not pomegranates. Shiuran bikara shall pass. So their amount is if it gets a hole the size of a loaf of bread. To allow its functionality to no longer be functional, then it becomes tar. Zayin, similarly kupas haganonim, gardener's boxes. They had bigger things. Once it can allow out vegetable bunches, then it's pure. Because again, they use their boxes for storing vegetable bunches. V'shel bale batim, if it's homeowners' boxes, b'moitzi teven, if the hole is enough to allow out thick straw. V'shel balonin bigvava, bathhouse attendants, if their boxes get a hole to allow out thin straw, that's what they use to light up the fires for the bath, to heat up the water in the bathhouses. So that's their usage, or their functionality of their boxes. Once it gets that hole, it's pure. Ches, base kaitis, a dish holder. They used to have these little types of plates that would hold dishes and big bowls. So, base kaitis, she'enim mekabel kaitis, says the Rambam, if a dish holder gets a hole, so it no longer can hold dishes, hoyelu mekabel hatamchuyin, since it can still hold bowls, hareze mekabel tuma, it remains able to become impure. V'chein base hari'i, a chamber pot. Today you would call it like a potty, what kids use for toilet training. She'enim mekabel mashkin, let's say it gets a hole, it cannot hold urine. Hoyelu mekabel hari'i, as long as it can still hold excrement, hareze mekabel tuma, it can still become tamei, because it can still use, or it can still serve part of its purpose. Halacha tes kol kli eitz shenechlek lishnayim tar. Any wooden utensil which splits in two is automatically pure. V'afal pi shehein mekablin al dafnei seyen, even if it can still hold in its walls, kilefasin, like a pan. Imagine you have a pan, but like a deep pan. You split it halfway, and now you can tilt it on its side. It can still hold. Doesn't matter. Once the original utensil is split, that's it. It's done. Chutz mi Keilim shel eitz shechetzion ein miktzasan kli bifnei atzmei mitchilas asiyasan. Unless you have a wooden utensil, which half of it or part of it is a utensil unto itself, the way it's made. Kigoyin hashulchan hakofel, like the folding table. Let's call this the folding table. The commentaries describe, there used to be like legs, and then they had a tabletop that could fold in half. I had a much better picture for this. I'll just show you it over here. This is it. See this? Mamish, you can see the hinges, how it's beautifully two parts of the table. And it's meant, you can fold it up and use it as half of a table. That's how it's made to be originally. So this concept where you have a piece of wood that's meant to be serving on its own, many times they would fold the table in half and only use half the table. So, right? To begin with, it's made in two parts, and it can be folded and unfolded. And like the variety platter, this is a variety platter. It's all made up of little indentations like bowls. Every part of it is a full bowl. And sometimes they would only use part of the bowls. So if it broke in half and all you have is one thing left, but since it's meant to serve on its own that way, so it remains impure, or at least able to become impure. Exactly. Okay, a folding chair. Not like this exactly, but basically a surface that serves as a chair that you can fold into two. So again, since part of it could work on its own, so it always remains impure, or it remains susceptible to impurity even when it breaks. And anything like this. Same thing if you have this, a cup storage, meant to hold flasks or cups. If one of the holes on the bottom, or one of the compartments gets a hole, only the one which became holed, which became punctured, becomes unusable or pure, but it's not considered connected to anything else, because each one serves on its own. If a second one gets a hole, it's also pure, but not called connected. If three get a hole, then it's too much already, then the whole thing is pure. The same thing in any similar utensils, same idea.
So that's 25%.
In this case, I just picked one, but I'm saying it's once three compartments get a hole, it's done. Halacha Yud Mashpeles. A mashpeles, according to most commentaries, is this. It was basically a mat that was built to go over an animal's back, and on the two sides were two openings. So when you pick it up and it kind of lays down flat, the openings aren't really, they kind of face each other, they're side to side. When you put it over an animal, it becomes like a basket. The middle is raised, and the corners of the sides go down lower, the pockets, they go down lower. If one of them gets a hole, it remains impure because it can still hold on the other side. If both sides gets a hole, then it's pure. Hashulchan, a table, the hadulpiki. Dulpiki is classically understood as a mankala table. They used to have these little tables with little indents that would serve beverages on it. So you would bring this table near the large table, sort of a mini buffet, but and then people can pick off of it. That's a dulpiki. That's the common understanding. Shenifchasu, if they broke, mekablin tuma, they still can become tamei ad sheyicholku v'yibadol kol chelik mechaveirei, until they split and every portion divides from its friend. Nitla achas melaglein tohidin. If one of the legs of these tables came off, it's still pure. V'chein min mitla shniya, same if two legs came off. Nitla haregel shlishis, if a third leg came off, it's basically unusable. So im chishev alein sheyechal al shulchan zeh al dulpekizu. If you decided to change your mind, like, you know what, no longer will this be a table, we'll just call it a board, an eating board. So then, they're still utensils, they can become tameh. But if not, if you didn't have that in mind, then it's no longer a table. Three legs are off, so they're pure, they're totally unusable. Wicker utensils, again I'll bring up yesterday's picture. If they wear away, if their rims wear away, tohidin, they're all pure. Unlike in the previous case of the plate, it's meant to be small, so even if it wears away, it remains impure. These wicker utensils, once their rims wear away, they're not usable anymore. If the security on their rim remains a tiny bit, like we learned yesterday, they remain able to become tameh. You have a board which you filled with pieces of wood and then you stuck it together. Tohida, it's pure. It's not called a utensil. Chipa b'nesarim mekabelas tuma. If you covered it nicely with wicker in an organized fashion, now it becomes a utensil and could become tamei. Halacha Yud Gimel safshel sheni sparik, a bench which came apart, toher, is pure. Sargei b'meshiches b'chavalim mekabel tuma. If you tightened it, you wound it up with ropes or things like that, then it goes back to being able to become tamei because it's usable again. Halacha Yudalad hasalim shel gemalim shehitiran. You have baskets on a camel's back, and you untied them to hide in. They're no longer serving their purpose, and they're pure. Chazar v'kashran mekablim tuma. You retie them, they become tamei again. Nimtzu mistaminu mitarin afilu asara pamim bayayim, which means they can convert their status. They can become tamei and tar 10 times a day. When they're tied on the camel, they're impure. Otherwise, they're pure. Halacha tezvav hashulchan le'adulpiki shechipan b'shayish. Back to the table, the mankala table, that you cover them with marble. Let's say you layered them with marble on top. V'shir b'hen mekema nachas hakaises, but you left uncovered the place where the cups go in. Mikabel and tuma, they can still become tamei. The covering of marble, because stone is not mekabel tuma. But so the fact that you covered it should remove its tuma. But since you left the place for the cups, it remains able to become impure. And if you cover it completely, it's all pure. Whether the coating is going to last or not last, the Rambam holds that coatings nullify a utensil. Whether you covered its rims that typically extend from the sides of the table or not. Whether the wood material of the table was boxwood, which is a very important type of wood, or any other type of wood, doesn't make a difference. Once you cover them, they're all pure, as we explained that coating makes it no longer a wooden utensil, now it's considered stone in this way, whatever it is, it gets the rule of the coating. So if the coating is pure, the entire table becomes pure.